everyone, I'm Arlene Dickinson. Thanks for joining me on my podcast.
It's no secret that small business is a big deal for TELUS. Earlier this year, TELUS helped make things better for small businesses through their pledge to stand with owners. In continuing their support for owners across Canada, they are excited to introduce the Owner's Advantage Plan, an exclusive mobility plan tailored to help business owners stay connected to their family, business, and community. The Owner's Advantage Plan offers a wide variety of benefits designed to provide greater value and more flexibility than ever before, including yearly device upgrades, endless data, same-day device repair, and access to on-demand virtual healthcare, all on the world's fastest mobile network in the world. Visit TELUS.com/ownersadvantage.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Reinvention. Today, Arlene chats with journalist and self-love advocate Danae Mercer. With a social media following of over 2 million people, you've likely seen Danae on your feed before. Widely known for exposing the ways in which influencers contort their bodies and edit images for Instagram, Danae's mission is to spread self-love and to ensure people know that their worth is not determined by likes and follows. Once the editor-in-chief of a well-known outlet and now a freelance journalist for many mainstream publications, Danae has a unique insider view of how the media works, which is part of the reason why she embarked on her journey to spread self-love and educate, a process which has helped her and countless others reinvent their lives.
So I'm talking to Danae Mercer today. And Danae, if you don't know Danae, please follow her on social media. She is the queen of self-love and paying attention to how you are really, as opposed to what social media and others expect you to be. And I have been so enjoying following her, and it's such a thrill to speak to you, Danae. You're in Dubai right now, and talking across very different time zones. So thanks for coming on the show with me and talking about Reinvention.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really super honored to be here.
So Danae has millions of followers, and she has done that. How long have you been doing social media posts for, Danae? How long?
Well, I've been talking about self-love since like 2019, but I would say the community has grown quite drastically since like the start of COVID. That's kind of when everything changed for the community.
Yeah. And what made you, maybe tell us a little bit about your story. What made you start this, and why are you so passionate about making and helping women in particular feel good about themselves and their bodies?
Sure. So I started talking about self-love and kind of body confidence concerns and those sorts of things back in April 2019. And like before that, I was doing a lot of like the really traditional, I'd say kind of Fitspo, luxury travel stuff on social media. And I'm a journalist professionally. So, and I was the editor-in-chief of a big publication, a big fitness publication out here. So I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to show. I need to show the fitness, and I need to show the glamour, especially where I'm based. But at the end of the day, I mean, I love fitness. But what I was showing wasn't me, and it wasn't who I am. And combined with that is the fact that I had an eating disorder when I was 19, and it happened after my mom died. It got very bad for a while. And so I've really had to navigate my own body image struggles and finding my comfort in myself and finding my place. And those two things together, I think I just reached a point in April where I was like, I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of not being myself. And maybe if I talk about some of these things, maybe if I show some of these things, maybe I will feel better. Maybe other women will feel better. And I did that first post and I was terrified, but I haven't, I was so scared. I was on the phone to my best friend, just being like, should I do this? Is this okay? But honestly, I haven't looked back since.
So interesting to me, like I want to just go back to you had an eating disorder when your mother passed away. And I'm sorry to hear that your mom has passed away when you were still relatively young. Tell me what that was like. How did it come to be? What was going on in your mind that created the eating disorder and made you feel like you were somehow not right?
Sure. Well, I think so. If you look at eating disorders or even just disordered eating, often it's not just about your body. It's usually a lot to do with the external factors, things that are happening in your life, because it becomes a coping mechanism. It's a tool that helps you navigate other situations. And for me, I've always kind of struggled in a way with my body. Like I've never felt very comfortable in my skin. I remember being 13, 14, 15 and dieting and feeling like I needed to lose weight. Like I developed very young, I developed very early. And I was always just aware of this body and it never really felt good to me. And, I tried all the diets like Atkins and South Beach and all of those. And then I think when my mom died, my world kind of fell apart and everything was just really, really difficult and really rough with life, with work, with school, with everything was so heavy. And it felt like food at that moment, food was something I could control. It was something I could navigate. And not only that, but it would get me praise because I could be really thin and I could, everyone wanted to be thin and I was doing it and I was doing so well. And it made me feel safe and it made me feel good. And it felt like this was one thing that I wasn't failing at, like I could succeed in. And unfortunately, it's an incredibly dangerous coping mechanism. It's the eating disorders, they are the deadliest mental illness. So it became very unhealthy very quickly. And yeah, it was a tough time.
How did you get out of it, Danae? What did you do did you get help? Did you seek help?
I'm really lucky, honestly. My university, Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska. Shout out to my Midwest folks out there.
Yay.
Yay. They were amazing. So basically I was, I am a huge nerd and I was a real academic kind of achiever and overachiever. And basically the professors and staff knew me because I was like that student that was like the really nerdy one. And we had Christmas break and then we had a meeting in January for a big scholarship. And I remember walking into that room with all these professors and academics, and I had lost so much weight and my hair was falling out and I looked incredibly ill because I was incredibly ill. I think I'd spent all that December barely eating. And when I say barely eating, that's exactly the minimal. So I was very sick. And I walked into that room and I could just see on their faces this kind of, oh my gosh, what has happened? And this combination of like love and fear and concern. And I also realized I could lose that scholarship, not because I didn't deserve it, but because they were worried for me and worried about additional pressure on me. And in the end, they gave me the scholarship, but they sat me down and they stepped in. Like my university actively stepped in and were like, we think you need help, and we are here to support you, but let's get you help. And through them, I got a counselor at the counseling center. I got a doctor/nurse at the medical center and a nutritionist as well. Cause it's the pre-med campus. They had all these resources, which is a blessing. And I had those for over a year. I would see them like once a week and it was all free of charge. And that kind of three-pronged approach, the mental, the physical, and the food, really helped me, I guess, recover quite like with determination.
Do you think your exterior beauty, I mean, you're a beautiful woman. So do you think that your nerdiness, your intelligence juxtaposed against the beauty and what people expect, from, there's I'm not quite sure how to frame this, because I don't want to sound like, beautiful women aren't also intelligent, but there seems to be this, it seems to be like when you're nerdy inside and you're physically beautiful, that there's this hard kind of how you come into the world and how the world sees you and what is expected of you. Do you think that's part of it?
Oh, I mean, that's a really great question. It's a really great question. I've never thought about that in the context of my eating disorder and everything that happened there. But I do think there have been situations in even my dating life where I think the kind of men who wanted me probably wanted I don't know. I have been in situations where I felt pressure to be pretty and not open my mouth. Right. And that's like a really horrible situation. So it's a great question. I need to I want to think about it.
Yeah, it makes me curious, because I feel like there's so much, I've been talking a lot about the expectations we place on ourselves and how we often do it because somebody else wants something from us. And so we're constantly trying to please everybody else's view of us and live up to their expectation of us. And we're not spending enough time thinking about who we are. And it's, I think in particular, this media and what happens in media with, the thinness, the beauty, the view of, whether or not you can be beautiful and also really smart. there's your really beautiful cat.
Sorry about that.
Okay, no, it's really pretty. I think that is really impacted maybe, you're younger than I am for sure, but I think there's a generation of women who've grown up feeling that, you had to find your place in the world, and your place started from your physical appearance, not from your intelligence. And if it started from your intelligence, you probably were somehow undesirable every other way. And it's just such a messed up thing. It's just so messed up.
Oh gosh. I remember reading, and I must have been in high school at the time. And I was always I was in AP classes, and doing all that stuff. And I remember reading an article in a women's magazine, and it was reporting on a study that basically said, they had tested these guys and they had tested, there's a group of girls that were less attractive. And then there were a group of girls that were super educated but still really attractive, and all these different things. And to summarize it, what the study showed is the one thing that would make the guys say no was when the women were more educated than them. They would accept anything else, but the moment the woman was more educated. And I remember reading that, and of course you're oh, but I want to be really educated.
Exactly. Wait a minute.
Is it just going to be me and 80 cats the rest of my life? Which is let me tell you, it's a beautiful situation, but it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, people, and when I think you get told you're intimidating or somehow that there's something aggressive about you if you have intelligence and good looks. It's just a very messed up environment. And I think about, I think it'd be remiss to say that I find it really, I love the juxtaposition, easy for me to say, of how you are so outwardly, you have great physical, beautiful characteristics, but you also have this wonderful intelligence, and you're not afraid to not be what everybody else thinks you should be. But you're doing it in Dubai, Danae, of all of the places, I have to, the Middle East is not exactly the most female friendly, let's talk about your body in public place. And yet you're doing it from there. So tell me about that. What's that like?
Well, so you've raised a lot of really great points. It's so interesting. This is a very interesting conversation. I think being in the region I am, for me, it probably made some of the things I started talking about a lot scarier, because I knew, some of the immediate criticism I got was from friends out here who were don't you realize you're not going to be invited to this event? You're not going to be, this brand won't want to work with you. Ooh, Danae, you're not, you won't be at this function. And the horrible thing is they were right. I remember, there was a yoga event with a big brand that I won't name. There was a yoga event, and they had invited all of my friends and everyone I knew. And then I just remember being oh, okay, so I am off those lists. Like that is done for me. That is done. They do not want to be associated with my quote unquote ugly, which is, it's not ugly. I would argue it's the woman's body, and whatever way it shows up is pretty beautiful and incredible. But for those brands, yeah, it's, I think it's something that is still emerging in the region and is maybe more nuanced to navigate. But I did also announce 3 days ago that I'm moving.
Oh,
and it's
sure.
I went to Italy, funny enough.
Of course, and your other half from Italy.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm jealous.
Love it. Well, the late hours are going to be brutal, but
Yeah.
But I am actually really excited to be able to open up bigger conversations about things I really care about.
And there shouldn't be you shouldn't be penalized for being honest and being, open about who you are. I find that the world is just so crazily judgmental. And I in a way that just, like the shaming culture and the cancel culture and the I'm woke now about stuff. Like all of it. I mean, I get it. I mean, we need to be conscious of what's happening in societal norms, and we need to understand what's going on. We need to make sure we're fighting against all prejudices but some of it is just the cancel and the shaming is just awful. So, but you're doing it in the midst of all that. I mean, in the middle of what is really, I think, a heightened hyperbole around looking perfect all the time in social media. You've gone the exact opposite way, which I think takes an enormous amount of courage. Where did you find the courage? Where do you find the, I've seen some of your posts and I think, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could. I mean, I think I'm pretty honest and I am honest, but I don't know if I'm as able to talk about my body the way you are. What got you there? What made you so courageous?
Well, thank you. I don't know if you can see, I'm over here like squeezing my elbow because I'm like, I'm not courageous. This is like, I'm like gripping my elbow. Because I don't think of myself that way. Like, I think I would say I am determined and I believe strongly in what I believe in. And that is maybe helping. I got a message the other day from a mom saying she sat with my phone with her 9-year-old daughter and they spent an hour like scrolling, looking at the images and talking about bodies and talking about social media. And I would say those are things I'm determined to do. I'm determined to try as much as I can to even the scale, to talk in ways that feel true to me about things that I've navigated, about bodies, about eating disorders, about mental health, about being a woman, and the things that we have to deal with. I don't think of it as courage, though. I think of it as there's a responsibility. Like I have been through so many things in my life, and many things I haven't even spoken about yet, but I would love to one day. And if I am lucky enough to end up in the position I've ended up in with the community I have, then I have a responsibility to try to help, and I would say I'm probably going to get it wrong pretty often. I'm still learning many things myself, but I think there's that core of responsibility.
Are you insecure?
I would say I am not the most secure person. I think people meet me and they expect this like really loud, dominant personality that's going to, be super forceful in the room. And when it comes to like work, like if I'm on a magazine or I'm a journalist and I'm reporting and I'm like investigating, I feel pretty forceful and strong. But when it's me, when it's my life, when it's my body, I'm still learning my strength in those areas. I would say I feel more comfortable with myself now than I ever have. Like I feel more assured of who I am. I'm more like proud of who I am. I'm happier with who I am. But I think probably like most women, I still have days where I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, that's, or, oh, that's hard. And that's why I journal and I meditate and I do these things that really tap into like here.
Yeah. I always say to people that because I'm very insecure, and I always say to people that professionally I'm very secure. I'm very clear on what I know and what I don't know, and I can be assertive about it and confident and talk about the things I know. But personally, I'm incredibly insecure around my body, around my looks, around all and you characterized it really well when you talked about being 13 and finding that you didn't feel comfortable in your body. And I think that's true for so many women. And we do, the show is about reinvention, and we do basically reinvent ourselves through the cycles of our life as females, whether, when we grow up and we figure out what our sexual identity is, we go through, we get our periods for the first time. We find ourselves, with hormones racing through our body, in love and looking for love all the time. Then we go through menopause. There's so many different aspects to our lives that we have to reinvent ourselves into. You're still kind of in the middle of that journey. How do you see yourself? How do you see people being able to reinvent themselves when their body changes through all that? Because your body is what it is today, but is it going to be like that 20 years from now? Is it going to, how are you going to deal with it then?
It's a great question. There's a poem that I found the other day and I just absolutely love. And it goes, and this is going to be brutalizing it, but it basically says, like, you will one day rise up as a woman you will shed the skin of all the women you were before and rise up with 1,000 names in your mouth before you taste the power of your own. Something like that. But
love it.
Oh, it's so powerful because, like you were saying, we do constantly reinvent ourselves. We try on different identities. We taste different words. And what I think is so wonderful is when women realize they don't have to listen to this person or this person. They don't have to be that or that. They just have to be what identity, what word, what taste feels right to them.
Right.
And that's incredible. And honestly, how will I handle changes going forward? How will I continue this journey? I hope with more and more strength. Like, I'm 34 now, and I would say, like, every year I get older, I get a little bit more like, this is me. And if you don't like it, that's okay. And if you do like it, awesome. And, you do you. And that feeling has just grown and grown. I know from speaking to so many mothers, I think motherhood and how your body changes there is a difficult journey and a really delicate one to navigate. So I'm curious to see what that will be like for me if hopefully I get that. I started finding gray hairs, so that's a new one. I'm like, whoa, well, how do I feel about this? But but fortunately, I've got our Facebook community is now 26,000 women. And even yesterday, a woman posted, and she's like, I've been letting my darker hair, which is me, I've been letting my darker hair grow out, and I've noticed I've got gray hairs, and I'm not sure about this. And I'm there as like the admin. I'm like, oh, tell me your advice. Like, this is so exciting, So I think I just hope I keep learning as I go through each reinvention.
Well, I will tell you, because I have gone through, I'm 64, so I'm 30 years older than you. And I can tell you that it took me a lot longer to get where you are. And you should be really proud of the fact that you already are starting to feel more confident about who you are. It took me many years. It took me being single and spending time by myself and starting to really think about who I was before I could reinvent myself into somebody who was quite comfortable in their body and quite comfortable with how I look and who I am. And, I'm grateful it didn't happen too late. It did happen, but I have a lot of respect for your generation who really are thinking about what equality means. And maybe that's what I want to come back to, is that when you don't hear stories of, I don't know how many, what men deal with in terms of body issues, et cetera, and feeling like their physicality is actually what defines them. I imagine there's lots of studies that say they don't have nearly the same type of pressure on them. Mm-hmm. But yet if you think about, you having the courage, and it is courage, Danae, it is courage. That first post when you said, am I putting this out there? It is courage you took. Why do you think men don't feel the same way about their bodies and worrying about what we think about them, what women think about them? Why is that?
it's really interesting because one of the questions that has come up a lot recently is from women in kind of the group in the community is like, oh, does my partner think about my body when we're being intimate? Does my partner like hate me for my body? Like, does my body's changed? Does my partner notice? Like, and it's often that kind of, we see ourselves mirrored in the men, but I don't think I've ever heard a man, and I'm not saying this doesn't happen, I'm sure it does, but I've never heard a man say like, does my partner think about my body while we're being intimate? It's more just like, heck yes, party time. Like
that's right. Yes, that's all they're thinking about. Yeah.
And I think for so many years, the way a female, a woman's value has been defined has been based on her beauty. And that isn't true for men. Like for men, there are different pressures. It's the pressure to be a provider. It's a pressure to keep the stable home. It's the pressure to always seem strong and not give emotions, which is why there's such a high rate of suicide among men. But for women, it's that pressure of my worth as an individual. To go back to like that article, right? My worth isn't in my brain. It's not in my degrees. Indeed, that could hamper me. My worth is in my aesthetic, and my worth is being pretty. And that's, I would love to say like social media has swept in and destroyed that. But then you go onto TikTok, which is arguably, I think it is the fastest growing platform at the moment. It is like where all the teenagers are. And oh my goodness, if that doesn't take us back 15, 20 years in terms of aesthetic and beauty. So it's something we still drastically need to fight against and talk about. Absolutely.
And you've experienced challenges on that platform where they're actually taking, you're there comparing bodies and talking, not comparing bodies, but showing how selfies and, kind of the fakeness of how people look and the imagery of what you look like in social media can be manipulated and changed, and it's not real. You're telling the truth. They take down your posts, and yet they're put up millions of posts of women just showing their bodies off, which are all manipulated for the most part. What's going on with that? What is the backlash to TikTok on that?
Well, it's frustrating. Let's just say that it's incredibly frustrating. Basically, I keep getting my videos taken down. And at first I thought, okay, well, it's because I'm in a bikini and they're just protecting innocence. Like they don't want these little ones to see skin. That's what they're doing. So the first few times it happened, I was just like, okay, Danae, you just need to cover up more. They're just trying to keep the little ones safe. Okay. And then I duetted one, which you can do on TikTok. You like partner with a video. I duetted one of a model that I had found, a model in a bikini, like walking down the road, doing sexy stuff. And I literally was wearing the same amount as her. It's just my body is different. I have cellulite, I have wiggles, and my video got censored. And I was just like, well, what's going on here? This feels strange. Looked into the bikini hashtag. And if you are a parent listening, it's worth looking at these. It's worth knowing what's on that platform, and right away, it was very clear it wasn't about the amount of clothing I have on. Anyways, I started speaking about it on Instagram, which is a larger platform for me. And I was inundated with different creators who were saying my self-love content's being taken down, or there's a girl who has a condition where her skin blisters. And she did a video just showing like, this is me in my life. And here's what I have to do every day. This is how I bandage my blisters. That was taken down. There's a trans activist who just like talking into the camera.
Yeah.
And her videos were taken down. So it's a reoccurring problem. And the conversations between myself and TikTok are happening, but at the same time, stuff keeps getting censored. So I think the biggest thing we can do right now, especially as adults, is be aware. Like there's a young girl, I think she's 17, 16, who she does self-love content. She shows her tummy and she's received hideous bullying from it, but she's really big and she's pretty confident, like her platform's large. And even today she was saying there's another account that's going around messaging big creators like larger size, who have a lot of followers, creators, saying like, hey, my management agency manages OnlyFans accounts. Have you thought about joining? Keep in mind, she's 16. And she's like, I'm underage. Like, what is this? And he's like, oh, sorry, I didn't know. And then he goes and he messages another one. And she's like, I'm underage. What is this? So it's stuff like that that's really important just to be aware of. Like, this platform could be incredible, but it's still learning how to be safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if it's learning how to be safe. I mean, maybe I think that's kind, because I actually think they do know. And I think they do understand what's going on, and they understand the power of sexuality being the draw to the platform. And you know, we can talk all we want about how we're changing, and you know, talk about being woke about, you know, things, you know, like we can talk that we understand what's going on. But the reality is that it's still such a male dominated world, and it's still a world dominated by algorithms that actually look for specific and are programmed by men for the most part. And I don't want to sound like I'm male bashing, because I'm not, but it's just a fact. I mean, predominantly these are male programmers who are thinking about kind of the right algorithms to build to, you know, get the content up to the top that is the content that is sexual in nature. I mean, it just is what it is. Yeah, those platforms, I mean, how long have social media platforms been around now for? Like 10 years?
10 years? 10 years? Yeah.
10 years? 10 years? 10 years, they should have learned a lot in that period of time about what's going on with the abuse of it and the bullying that's going on it. It needs to reinvent itself. Those social platforms have got to reinvent themselves into being, and people can talk all they want about free speech. It's not about free speech. You know, hate language and bullying of 16-year-old girls who are just talking about themselves. Like, that's not okay.
No, and I think I absolutely agree. As someone who has, you know, I grew over 1 million followers in, I say, 3 months at one stage. And I had to learn very quickly, because you go from quite like a small community that knows you and are all, you know, your little cheerleaders, and you're cheering each other, and it's really beautiful. And then when you shoot up, and suddenly the hate grows as well. And you have to learn very quickly how to handle stronger voices or people tearing you down. And especially if you are, I mean, you said in a way there are elements of you that are insecure. There are definitely parts of me that are insecure. And there were nights where I was up crying and shaking because of some of the stuff that was sent my way. And I think of myself, you know, I'm 34 years old. I am like ex-editor-in-chief. I have worked for like CNN and big global platforms, and I'm still there with my phone sobbing in the middle of the night. And I think of these little like 16-year-olds, 15-year-olds who are still learning their place in this world. And I 1,000% agree that we have a responsibility to not let that hatred happen to them.
Yeah, that's well said. I believe that there's got to be more and more voices. I've been talking a lot about, you know, kind of my journey is at my age and my stage in my career, and the women in my community that reach back out to me, and men as well, you know, really are just thankful that somebody's telling the truth about what it feels like to be at this stage of your life and alone, you know, and single. And I think, or just talking about these conversations where we really, I think, undress, you know, this reality of what people expect from us. And I think, you know, back to the question on, you know, what do you think got us here? I do think marketing and media have an enormous role to play. I don't know, like I grew up with, you know, reading, you could read some of the old magazines where if you weren't taking care of your husband when he came home and you didn't look perfect and you weren't in a dress and the meal wasn't on the table and the drink wasn't ready to put in his hand and the kids weren't perfectly quiet, if that wasn't happening, then you were a failure as a female. You were like a total failure. And so that it's hard to get rid of that imagery as you find your own strength. And you have grown up in a different generation, but you found a strength. I know you say it's not courageous, but it is courageous. I want to tell you, I think you're very courageous. And you don't do it by shaming other people. You're not holding up, do you know Celeste? Yeah. Okay. So So I really love that she's not shaming the models that she's showing. She's just kind of saying, like, this is the real world. I'm going to try this too. And she's basically saying, some people are born with great physical attributes. They can do things because they're physically, God gave them whatever they have. It's not because they've done anything different. And she gets on there and just is herself. And I've noticed that she's been getting shamed because she's lost weight, which I just think is just so crazy. Like, she's taking care of herself and now she's getting shamed because you looked better when you were, now you're not as funny or as real. Like, it's, you see the comments, as you said, you kind of go, how do people find permission to reinvent themselves when everybody's judging you? How do you do it? How do you think people, what's the advice you give to people?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's so many things there that are worth talking about. I think on a personal level, I'm a big fan of not shaming, and big fan because I mean, if you look at like even Brene Brown did a bunch of research into shaming, didn't she? Where studies have shown shaming doesn't create change. It creates people digging their heels in and saying, no, this is who I am. Or it creates this really awful feeling of lack of self-worth. Like, it's not a positive way to create change. And if that is your ultimate goal, you don't do it. It's like, I have a really strong and very, something I believe in very strongly, and it's, I don't play with bullies, and I will never play with bullies. And that's just, we don't play that game on my page. We don't play it in Facebook. We don't play it with the people I interact with. Like, I don't play with bullies, because if you truly want to enact change, that's not how you do it. Mm-hmm. I think, how do you reinvent yourself in a world that is trying to tell you not to? And it's something I've had to learn. I've had to learn multiple times. Like, I was when I was at Creighton for a while, I was down the route of becoming a professor. Like, that was the path I was taking. I was a double major. I was doing research into political science and math. And I hate math, but I was doing it, and I was, determined, and I was like published in academic articles and those sorts of things. And with my eating disorder, part of the recovery was me being really honest with myself and saying, like, am I doing this because I love it and because I care about it and it fills my soul? Or am I doing it because I think that's how this person will respect me, and that's how I'll get their approval, and that's how, they will think I'm worthy? Am I doing it for me, or am I doing it for them? And I was 1000% doing it for them. And I had to take that step. I had to go and do that reinvention process where I met with that individual and I said, I don't want to do this. This isn't me. And I thought I could make it work. And I thought maybe it was, but it's not. And it was hard because that individual was like, okay, well, this is done then. And for someone who, I have always looked for parental figures in my life because of my life, it was very difficult. But it wasn't the only time that's happened. Like, I think, even if you look at my shift in what I talked about on social media, that was another situation where I was like, I need to be true to who I am. And I'm not, because I'm afraid of what they will say. I'm afraid of what they will think. But I truly believe, like, inside each and every one of us, it's like, I think of it like a little popcorn kernel. Like, I think we have this little popcorn kernel that just sits in the very core of us. And we know what it is. We know what our truth is. We sometimes lose sight of it. We sometimes ignore it. But at the end of the day, like, it is there. It is there in our heart. And if we fight it, if we ignore it, like, we can force things, we can do things, but we will know we're not being true to ourselves, and it won't feel good. So I'm a big believer in, like, we have to listen to that. Like, we have to, for our own sanity, for our own joy, for our own life. Like, and that's how you reinvent yourself, is you give yourself that grace to, okay. So another quote I love is, it says, anything that begins with, I'm worried about what they'll think, doesn't end with you being your true self. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how you reinvent yourself, is you don't worry about them. what's going on with your popcorn? You know?
Yeah. That's a great way to put it as well. I think as you're talking, I was thinking about, I wonder, to me, the more honest I've been with people, like the more open I've been about my life, the better I felt. I think we're so afraid to be vulnerable because we're afraid of what people will think, as you said, but actually it's freeing. It's incredibly freeing to be who you are. It suddenly you go, and it doesn't matter if you like me or not. But you said something that I find interesting. You don't engage with bullies, which I'm the same way. When I just ignore, like there's no point. But yet you found yourself crying, and shaking in the middle of the night because there was so much hatred, and it still impacts us. Just because you don't engage doesn't mean you're not feeling the pressure of that. How have you coped with it? Do you read every comment still?
Well, I think so. I cope with it in a few ways, right? Like, I think when it first happened to me, when it first started happening, it was a really steep learning curve, and it can be pretty painful, and it makes you doubt yourself. Like shaming, it's shaming, right? And it's shaming of, oh, well, maybe I'm not worthy. Maybe I have done something wrong. Maybe I don't deserve this. Maybe I'm a bad person. Like, you get all those thoughts. Yeah. But then I think what helped me learn to navigate my first experience and then navigate the others after is when I saw those individuals who were bullying me, and I saw them attacking young girls with eating disorders after me. And for me, it's hard. I don't know if this makes sense, but sometimes I find it hard to stand up for myself, but it's so much easier to stand up for people that I see as needing someone to protect them. Maybe it's like if you were to kick me, I'd probably be like, okay, that's all right, fine. But if I saw you like kicking a puppy, we would not play that game. Like I will be in there and I will be, I don't know, kung fuing. I don't know where this analogy is going.
No, but I get it. Like you're like a justice warrior. I totally understand that. Like
I'm glad that's what you took from my puppy analogy.
No, I did because I like people can, if they want to go at me, okay, I'll fight I'll defend myself, and I don't need somebody to defend for me. I can defend myself. But when I see somebody who is vulnerable and is innocent and who has no control being bullied, I that's where I just kind of go, no, that is not okay. Like you cannot do that. And and I think it comes from a complex childhood as well. One of the things about being honest about yourself is, you being really honest about your body, but you mentioned earlier that, there's things in your past that you're going to address one day. Do you think when you finally get to that place, and I don't think addressing them means you have to say them to the world. I think addressing them just means that you have to acknowledge them in some way with yourself, and kind of think about what they do. Sometimes people think that freedom comes with spilling your whole world to everybody. I don't think that's true. I think it's about just acknowledging your past. Do you feel like you're on that journey? Do you feel like you're getting to the place where you can look at your past and unbundle it and recognize it?
It's a really beautiful question. I think, yes, it's the short story. Yes, absolutely. I think, I don't know if this is something many women experience or not, but for me, as I get older, the more I understand who I was when I was younger. And it's fascinating because you kind of look back and you're like, oh, okay, I get what was happening there. Okay, I understand why I did that. Okay, like, gosh, I wish I could have a conversation with her because if only she knew. And I don't know, I also think for a long time for me personally, I was probably ashamed of my past, ashamed of where I've come from. There were like trailer parks and that sort of thing. And it can be challenging when you are in certain environments to be like, well, this is my background, but or at least for parts of my life. But as I become more confident in myself and my story, I don't feel ashamed. I feel more, maybe someone else needs to hear this. Like maybe there is a little girl who needs to know that, she can do this. I don't want to say she can do this too, like, but she can chase her own dreams, or So yeah, I think I'm moving in that direction.
That's one of the things you talk about is what, about your 13-year-old self, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What would you tell your 13-year-old self right now?
Yeah.
And that, so you're basically doing that to all the other 13-year-old girls out there who are going through, which I think is in itself really wonderful. And I do believe, like I remember those meetings, Danae, where I'd be at big social events or big, or business meetings in a boardroom, and people would go around the table and talk about their backgrounds and how smart they were and how big they were. And I'd sit there and go, holy shit, like I'm not any of these things. And I don't have a degree. I don't have this. I don't have that. I would go through it all. And I would self-talk into all the things I didn't have versus think about what I did have, because I was so busy comparing myself to everybody else. And when you reinvent, I think what you have to do is you have to take the past with you, that you have to understand the past and figure out what you learned from it, but you don't let it drag you back there. Okay, that was my reality, and that doesn't define who I am in the future. It helps shape and inform me, but it doesn't define me. And I think that's the trick. We get thinking people will define us by our formative years, right?
Yeah, I love the way you've put it, where you said you would get distracted by comparing yourself instead of thinking about essentially what you in your own way brought to the table. Because I think so many women, like we talk ourselves out of reinvention or out of dreams or out of goals because we look at what everyone else has done and we think like, well, they have this or they've done this or I will never be this good. But I love your way of looking at it, because we could flip that and say, yeah, but look what I can bring, right? I think that's beautiful.
I always say to people, listen, there's physical limitations to what I can do. I won't ever be a supermodel. I'm not 5'10". I'm not, young, and I'm not beautiful that way. But I could be the person at this stage in my life who invents a new type of model who looks differently and thinks differently. Not that they're wrong. And there's, the two different, my point is that you can always invent something. You can always create. And I think creating means that you can't do what maybe the norm is, but you can do something completely different. That's very similar, but in its own way beautiful. So I think we have to tell people as they want to reinvent themselves that don't think about what is normal, think about what's possible. And what's possible is pretty much, or don't think about what's not possible, which is I can't be a supermodel. Think about what is possible. What can I be? What am I capable of? What's your words? I mean, what's your words of advice to, I don't feel like I've done justice to the interview, in that I feel like I really hope that my listeners to this podcast will go and look you up and realize, the things you're doing, the vulnerability, the honesty, the authenticity, the true meaning of what you're trying to do, which is help women feel good about their bodies, and self-love. I do hope they will look you up and follow you and be a positive member of your community, because you deserve all of that and more. But what's your closing words that you want to say to the other 13-year-old girls that are out there? What would you like to tell them?
I think I would like to say, just know that whatever you're feeling, whether it's, oh, my body is not pretty enough, oh, my face isn't pretty, oh, who I am, I'm too stupid, I'm not worthy, I'm a bad person, or if you are doing weird things with food or weird things with substances, like whatever kind of shame you are carrying in your heart, I think just know that you aren't alone. You're not broken. You're not a mistake. That there is a billion-dollar industry that is thriving off of making you feel as bad as possible. Mm-hmm. And that you're the exact opposite. You are powerful and you are strong and special, and exactly as you are in that very moment, you are so wonderful and you are so worthy.
Yeah, that's fabulous. I don't have anything I don't want to add to that, because it was a wonderful way to end the interview. Danae, you are really inspirational. So thank you for taking the time from Dubai. Where in Italy are you going to be going? Where are you going to go?
Florence.
Florence.
I'm
Oh,
so
I love
excited.
Florence. Oh, Friends Day. It's beautiful there. It's so beautiful.
It's so pretty. It's so romantic, right? It's just a perfect place for love.
and you're in love.
Yeah, I'm in love. So
it's love. Is this
it's a new but very strong love. So it feels really good.
It's a move to Italy love.
It's a move. It's a move my cats to Italy. That's it's a difficult one.
Well, I wish you nothing but joy and happiness. I can't wait to see all of your posts in the future. And thank you so much for spending the time talking to me today about reinvention.
Thank you.
Things are seldom what they seem, especially on social media. When Danae set out to show this, she was met with skepticism from many around her. She was told she would never be welcome in certain crowds or popular events due to the stance that she's taken. But that didn't slow her down. Having dealt with the pressure of conforming to society's preconceived notions of beauty and recovering from an eating disorder, she is determined to reinvent the way society looks at a perfect body. Determining your worth is never accomplished through the opinions of others. Whether you're a world-famous supermodel or a best-selling author, only you have the power to validate yourself. Stay safe and stay human. Thanks for listening, everybody.
This podcast is made possible by the great folks at Venture Communications. Thanks to our engineers, writers, producers, and all the folks who work really hard to bring you these great stories of reinventions each and every week.